Hello and welcome. My name is Adrena. I am the owner and accountant here at Accounting by Adrena. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I create and edit a data table in order to create a pivot table so that I can analyze all my spending and income for a certain time period. So the report that I'm using is actually going to be a report directly downloaded from the QuickBooks test drive version. And I'll go ahead and link that test drive version below in the description box. But basically, it's just a sample data set. So this is not like proprietary information. I'm not giving out anybody's information. This is all just sample data. And I'm so glad that it's there because now we can learn on Excel how to manipulate the data in order to create a data table and therefore a pivot table. So one of the key ways that I use a pivot table as far as my analysis is concerned is to know how much I'm spending by month, by vendor, or however you want to kind of do that analysis. I do have a free downloadable PDF that you can head over to accountingbyadrena.com/beorganized. This is kind of like a one-page document to help you stay organized for tax time. And so then this would be kind of like what we're going to do here in the Excel video is kind of like learn how to look at that one pager and compare it to what we're actually spending by month. So one of the things that you might want to ask yourself is, are my utilities the same month by month? If there's kind of like a variation, maybe that means that your utility bill had increased. Okay, so those are kind of like the high level ideas on this video. I'm really excited to walk you through it. I love Excel, and I think this will be pretty clear in the video. But if you have any questions, do feel free to drop them down below. Again, like I said, I love Excel, so I would love to help you walk through any questions that you have for Excel. All right, let's jump right into it. All right, so this is a spreadsheet that I exported directly out of the test drive version of QuickBooks Online. Now, it doesn't necessarily have like a very user-friendly interface, and I'm going to show you exactly what I do in order to make it a friendly data table, and then we'll throw it up into a pivot table. So first things first is for data tables, you have to make sure that everything in the data table is exactly the same. So that means this whole column needs to be exactly the same. This whole column needs to be exactly the same, so on and so forth. And each line needs to be represented each line needs to have its own identifier. So the first thing that I like to do, honestly, is just to change the font so it's all one cohesive font. And I usually like to choose Calibri, and then I usually go 11. And then there's two quick buttons here that I like to do right away. Whoops. Is the merge and center. So there are some rows here that are merged, and I don't want any rows, cells, anything merged when I'm trying to create a data table. And then I just take off wrap text. I just can see these are a wrap text, and so it's just easier to read everything when it's not like that. Second thing that I like to do is make sure that I'm bringing this account down to all of these lines, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit. So I'll show you guys a time lapse of that, and hopefully you won't get bored. Right, so now I am done editing my spreadsheet and making sure everything looks cohesive. Each line has its own identifier. It's just going to work perfectly for what we're doing today. Now, one thing I want to note is that this report is called transaction detail by account. And I just pulled all of the data for 2021 that QuickBooks had in their test drive version. So it doesn't really have like all of the months. So as you can see, there's like August, September, maybe it just starts in August and then goes through December. So it's not like a full year's worth of data, but it's good for what we're doing today. Now, there's a couple of other things that I want to do so I can, I already know like what the end product is going to be as far as the pivot table is concerned. So what I'm going to do is segregate out what is listed on the balance sheet and then what is listed in the profit and loss statement. Because when I'm working with this type of data table, I want to really just look at income and expenses, which is what's on your profit and loss statement. So I'm adding in another column here that says account type, and I'm just going to segregate it out by balance sheet and profit and loss. Since the report is already generated out of QuickBooks, divided out, the first top of the report is the balance sheet. And then we have to make sure we can see the income right there. So that's where the profit and loss statement starts. And this is how I'm going to do it. If you find that little cross at the edge of the cell with your cursor, if you just double click that, it's going to copy this cell all the way down. And since there's another column next to it, it'll probably just go up to this point. Let's test it and see. Okay, so find that cross and double click. All right, let's see how far it went. Oh, it went all the way down. Wonderful. Maybe it goes by the data in this side. So now that I have those two kind of account types in there, there's another thing that I want to note, because so the way that this report is exported out of QuickBooks is this column here isn't specific to like the date type in Excel. It's actually, you can see what it says here. It says general, even though if you click in the cell that looks like an actual date, it still says general. So meaning that is text. It's not recognizing it as a number. I don't know why this is, and I wish QuickBooks would do something about that, but I have a quick workaround. So if you go ahead and open up a new text document, and then you go ahead and grab all of these dates, you can copy, paste that into a new text document. You'll do a Control A and then paste again up here, Control V. Now it's going to start recognizing, I don't know, it's a subtle change, but now it says date up here. So now it's recognizing it as a number. And from that point, you can format the date however you like it. And I normally like to format it with, 2 digits for the month, day, and year. All right, so now that we have all of that going well for us, I don't know if you can tell, but I like to just fidget around with my Excel files just to make sure like I'm making them user-friendly, that you can easily consume it as you're reviewing it with your eyes, that it's not something that you're just like trying to figure out like, okay, what is this? But that it's pretty straightforward. So I like to make things pretty uniform. And I definitely formatted this column. I don't know if you caught that, but it was number. And then this is kind of like my favorite way to format numbers. I feel like if you put like the dollar sign in front of it, it just starts getting really busy, especially when you're looking at really long numbers. So I kind of just stopped doing that. All right, so next up, I want to make sure that I can create a data table off of this. So we have our information there. Everything looks good to me. Actually, some of this is off a little bit. So I'll show you one quick fix. So you can actually double click on this right here. So once you go in between two columns, there's like a little, I don't know, random arrow thing. You double click that and it'll just automatically make the column the width that it needs to be. You can do that on this side too with the rows. So first things first, I want to make sure that I can create a filter. So it's on the data tab in Excel, and then it's called filter. Your cursor, your cell that needs to be selected is just anywhere within your data table. You can go ahead and click on filter and it'll automatically recognize, especially when everything is uniform in here, it'll automatically recognize that this is a filter. Now, when I'm scrolling up and down, I want to make sure that I'm keeping the first row frozen because I want to see that first row as I'm scrolling up and down. And a quick way to do that is if you click on view, there's a little button called freeze panes, and then you just click on freeze top row and voila, there it is. So, okay, so the next thing is to making sure that these are all uniform. I usually just sort it and then I can tell where there's an empty space. I usually try to catch this when I'm editing the data table, but I missed this one apparently. And so I just take out that first space and then we can try that again. There we go. Now everything looks good and uniform. I did notice something funny. This looks like it was a check out of, and then it was coded to bookkeeper, but then this looks like the same vendor and it was coded to accounting. So I would just say, like, as a note, you want to make sure that you're being consistent with how you're coding things in QuickBooks. So you can go to, or you can pay it however you like, but as far as the GL account, the general ledger account, the category that it goes to, make sure it's consistent, especially when you're dealing with the same type of vendor. So once that's all done, we have our data table completed. And then we can go ahead and save that. So we could do a file save as, and we can just say data table. And then from here, what I want to do is show you how I just quickly create a pivot table off of this data table. So what you could do is rename this to whatever you like. And so for these purposes, I'm just going to say data table example. Now it's actually going to be pretty easy from here. So you just go to insert and pivot table. And then it's asking, okay, what's the range of the data table that you want to turn into a pivot table? And you can see these little guys right here. It's highlighting the data table section. And yep, that's exactly what I want. So you just go ahead and click on OK. Now this little sidebar pops up, and what you want to do is kind of like create the pivot table. So it's already there. Now we just have to modify it to our own liking. So I already know that I want the GL account to be there, and I do want the name because I want to see the vendors when I'm looking at how much we paid them month by month. And so this is kind of really one of the purposes of why I like to do this, because I want to make sure that everything is consistent. If I see an increase in prices, then that's kind of like a clue for me to make sure I have it budgeted, or a conversation to the vendor to ask why there's an increase in pricing. Okay, so we've got the GL account, we've got the vendor name. I'm going to pull the amount into the values section, and then you can see it populated here. I just like to format it real quickly by, so sorry about that. You just click on this little guy. It's like a drop down. It'll happen for all of these. Click on value field settings, and then it's going to say, okay, what kind of setting do you want this field for sum of amount? So I'm going to say sum, and then we're going to say number format. So it's the same number formatting that I have on the data table. Click on OK, OK, and then all of a sudden it's nice and uniform. Okay, now what we did before is we created a separate account called account type. we created a separate column called account type. And I want to filter this report. I want to filter the pivot table by account type. So that's an easy way to do it up here. It's called filters. And then you have to come up here and select which filter do you want. So I want profit and loss because I only want to see income and expenses. So this is going to make it really easy for me to see, okay, this is income, and I can highlight that one color. There's discounts given, so this might also be income. It's like a reduction in income, right? And then let's see if I can find if there was another income account. You can always go back to the data table. And so you can filter it out this way. So you can select profit and loss. And then you can see if there's any other income accounts that we're missing. So it looks like it's just these 3 lines for income. That's not too much income. So I'm hoping that they made more money like in the summer months, maybe. They are a landscaping company. So maybe that's the clue, is that they have more income. Maybe that's a clue. They have more income in the summer months. Okay. So let's just keep those highlighted for now. If you noticed, if I clicked outside of the pivot table, the option for the pivot table fields goes away. So you have to click back inside in order to see this option come through. So this is actually a summary of everything that's in the data table. If I want to split it out by month, which I do, and this is how I normally do it, I go ahead and click and drag the date field to the column section, and then I can remove this one that says date because I just want to look at the months. Now, if you're using a data table that crosses like a fiscal year or something like that, then you might want to filter it a little bit more by like year, or if you have more like data in there. But since we don't have that much data, we're just going to filter it by month. And then I just kind of like to format it from here. You can't do much after this as far as formatting is concerned. You can add, like you can add like a border to this if you'd like. And then that way it kind of looks nice and uniform that way. But what I like to do is just, I go through each of this, make sure all of the accounts are categorized properly. I look at how much we're spending each month for each vendor, make sure that everything looks good. If there's something that looks off, Amy's Bird Sanctuary. Okay, so maybe there's 2 types of services that we offered to Amy's Bird Sanctuary. So that could happen for other clients as well, that for those 2 as well. Now this not specified account, we can always remove it because that one really is in, you can see this here, it's created by QuickBooks Online to link credits to charges. So usually when you're pulling a report and you pull the report by accrual, I believe this is going to show up here. So that is pretty much how I like to create pivot tables from data tables. I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or thoughts. What would you do differently? I would love to hear from you guys.